Yeah, so I have my cluster up and running now, and just want to see what we do in this.
No, we stick to our game. We are not, don't let anything change your mind.
Can we
Not
mute? Sorry. How do I check? Yes, okay, muted. Yeah, so I have my cluster up and running now, and I'm just going to, do basic things that people do. So first of all, I'd like to first see what namespaces I have. So I'm using Kubernetes, that's why I'm using this, but I've configured it in a way that it shows you, the full meaning of these aliases. So I'm trying to get the namespaces, and these are the namespaces that we have in the cluster. All right, so then I'm going to do, first of all, maybe you want to do a get pods, which is kgpo. All right, and I don't have any pod here. You want to do of course, if there are no pods, then there are no deployments. You want to maybe do get services or get all. Let's see. So we have this service, which is the default service that comes with this cluster, this kind cluster. So what we can do is we can create a simple pod, and we can do maybe kubectl create. Now you can always use the help if you don't know what to do. Always use the help command. All right, so I want to create a pod, and you can just check here. For instance, I can create. Okay, this shows me how to create a pod using a JSON, and stuff like that. But no, I don't want to create a pod using JSON. Let's see. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, I can create a deployment as well. That's another one. So we can either create a pod or a deployment. But yeah, let's just create a simple pod. So I can do create, then I can pass the image for what I want to create. Now I want to create a pod, and maybe I can just say my app, something like that. And I want to use this image Nginx. Let's see if it gives an error. Oh, sorry. I have to use the run command, pardon me. I was wondering because there's no pod here. So I have to use the run command. But before we do that, let's do krun help. Sorry, just click that and do that again. Yeah, so I can just do this, to just start a pod on the next pod. Okay, so let's just grab this and we can use that. So it says pod created, and if you do kubectl get pods, it shows you that a pod, is there, and it gives you the status container creating. So you can do this. This is 4 seconds ago. This is 12 seconds ago. So you can just keep monitoring, or you can pass a watch flag -w. So it watches it whenever the status changes. It changes. It shows you just get it instead of running the commands repeatedly. You can just wait for it to run. So whilst this is ongoing, I'll create a new tab and I'll do, so this is still creating. I can do, okay, let's just wait for it, actually. I can just wait for it. Of course, if you're unsure whether this is actually working, nothing stops you from stopping and starting again. And you still get 21 seconds, 68 seconds. So this is pulling the, okay, yeah, I think what I wanted to do is this, sorry. What I wanted to do is describe. I want to describe. So we can do a describe on the pod. Okay, so it's running now. Yeah, I wanted to describe before it started. But I can describe that pod to get more information about it. So I just did kubectl describe pod and the name of the pod, which is this one, Nginx. So it gives you more information, tells you that this is the name, this is the namespace, it gives you some other information, service accounts. We'll look at many of these things as we proceed. You have the node, the start time. These are, this information. Look at the status running, which is this one. The IP, we have all of this, the image, which is the Nginx image. We want the open image available for everyone. Yeah, you can see several information. Then the other one that I like to check is the events. It tells you. So when we started that, it showed us, it first of all assigned this to a node. All right. Now, if you have questions, please ask me. All right. We're not, the essence of this is not to have everything broken down to the nitty-gritty, right? You have to do your own research yourself. You just want to get hands-on, want to just, practice with things. So you might have to go and do research. For instance, what does node mean? I'll try my best to explain as much as possible, but you have to do your own research as well. All right. So this, first of all, it tells us that the scheduler assigned that, pod, which is in the default namespace, and this is the name of pod, assigned it to this node. All right. Then it began to pull the image. Then it successfully pulled it in this time. Then it created the container. Then it started the container. And that's what we have right now. So you can see the event, the how it changes from one state to the other. But yeah, it's running now. So we can also, another thing we can do is we can check the logs. So this was described. And this is one way you can troubleshoot as well. So you want to troubleshoot, maybe this stuff is not starting and you're getting an error. You can troubleshoot using this command. So I'm just going to create another pod, using a wrong image. Maybe I'll use, instead of Nginx, I'll use Nginy. So let's see. Okay, the Nginx already exists. So I'll change this name to Nginy. Now, if I do kgpo, I have two ports, Nginx, Nginy. Now this is creating. So I now I already know that there's nothing like Nginy, except of course, maybe somebody has done something. But I just assume there's no Nginy image. And let's just do that again. Now it says image pullback off. So you want to debug this, what's happening, you can just do a key describe, that's kubectl describe on the port, then name of the port. So I have this, and this is the same describe command we used earlier. And you can just scroll down to events. So yeah, it says, successfully assigned, same thing it did. Now it's trying to pull the image. And remember, the first one we did, it successfully pulled the image, but this one says failed to pull image, Nginy. It gives you all of this, failed to unpack, Docker, blah, 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 failed to resolve reference. It tells you that this reference, you can't resolve it. Then it says pull access denied. Repository does not exist or may require authorization. So it's trying to pull from, there's a default registry where this is trying to pull the image from. And it says that it's either that repository does not exist in that registry, in that, container registry, or it may require authorization. So sometimes there isn't a private registry, for instance, that has, that requires some authorization, or auth credentials. You may need to supply that first of all, otherwise you get the same error. So for me, I know that it's not authorization that's the problem. I know that this does not exist because I just formed this right now. So this is how you can debug by using the describe command. And you just know that, oh, I made a mistake, Nginy should be Nginx, then you can just make that change. So if you want to make the change, how do you do that? There's an edit command. Now you can delete this, of course, you can simply delete this pod and restart. And you can, instead of doing kubectl run Nginy with image Nginy, you can do an edit. So for instance, if I do kubectl edit pod engine Y. From here, it opens an editor for me. I'm using Vi, as you can see it here. I like Vi. So it opens this, then I can change the image. Now, you can just do on Vi, you can press the // which is that. Then you can search for image. So it takes me straight to the image. I can come here and I press my I key to insert, and I change this to Nginx, and I'll escape :WQ to save and quit. Now you can do that. All right. Let's see if it says edited. Let's just quickly see that. So you see now it's running. All right, then I can do the describe again on that. Earlier we had image pullback off, error, blah blah blah. So let's do it again. And now we see okay. Oh, sorry, this didn't tell us anything except with well, I was expecting to see a difference or an additional event, but of course we are not seeing anything there. But this is not the error from this one. Like, it's not the error while it is running. This is the previous error, so it persisted somewhere for you. All right. So, but it's running and it's running fine. I'll just delete that image. So I'm using Kubernetes, so I'll do krm-po. RM is like remove in Linux, CLI. Then I'm doing kubectl remove pod, po. Then I'll say engine Y. Then you see the full command. The full command is kubectl delete pods. All right, so you need to know, forgive me that I'm using Kubernetes, but you need the actual commands. Now, if you're doing the certification, for instance, you may not have access to Kubernetes except you set it up during the exam. Right? So you need to know the actual commands. This is not kdelete, this is krm, but it's alias for, it's the alias for kubectl delete. So I've deleted that, and if I do kubectl get pods, I just have the nginx pod running. So the other thing we can look at is we can check the logs of the application. How do we check that? It's different from describe. Describe gives you information about the application, but we want to check the logs of the application itself, of the pod. All right, that's the container running inside this pod. We want to check the logs. Now, a pod is not a container. All right, a pod is as in, it's not, I'm talking about, it's not of course, it's a container for a container. All right. So pod is just like, think of it like a peanut, that you have to break the pod to get the nut in it. So the nut in it is the container. All right. That's like the Docker container, for example, while the pod is like the shell. So inside this nginx pod, you have the container running there. So that's the logs that we want to check, the logs of that container. So you can just quickly do klogs, that's kubectl logs. Then you specify the name of the pod. So it gives you the logs. This is this is typical nginx logs. If I was using maybe a Python app, running a Python app or a Node.js app in my pod, I'd get the logs as well if the app exposes those things to us. So yeah, we have that. This is that's another way you can debug things. If your application is crashing, maybe there's a crash loopback error. Earlier on we had an image pullback error, but if you have something like a crash loopback error, you can check the logs of the container. Why is it crashing? And you may find something interesting there. So that's also part of troubleshooting. Yeah. So let's see, what else can we do? We have our pod running. Now, if something happens to this pod, right? If, for instance, maybe this pod crashes, it's because of maybe, let's assume the pod doesn't have enough, there's not enough memory for the pod to run, and we're getting a memory, problem or memory issue or a CPU issue on the node where the pod is running, and it crashes. It doesn't start again. It doesn't restart. And that's one of the beauties of Kubernetes, is that Kubernetes can help you to, there's something called self-healing. All right. Kubernetes can provide you that self-healing capability, but you don't get that out of the box by creating a pod directly. You get that using by creating a deployment instead. So now we have a pod, but I'm going to delete this pod, RMPO Nginx. So I don't have any pod running anymore. But what we want to create now is a deployment. All right, a deployment creates a pod. So I'm not going to create a pod directly. I'm going to create a deployment. Deployment will help me to create that pod so that if there's any error or if there's any problem, with my container, with my pod, the deployment can restart that pod by itself. That's what we call self-healing. So let's do k-create. Earlier we did k-run, but now we're doing k-create. So we're going to create a deployment, and Kubernetes allows you to use short names. So deploy is same as deployment or deployment.apps. I'll say create deployment nginx, and I'm going to pass the image. Image is equal to nginx. Then I'll pass the replica. I'll explain this as I proceed. One replica, replicas. Let's see, what's the error? Oh, I didn't spell. Did I make mistake? Replicas. So let's see. It says replicas. Did I spell it as? Oh, sorry. So I didn't pass the double hyphen dash replicas one. So I'll do this now. It says it's created the nginx deployment. Now when I do kubectl get deployment, I can do deployment or deployment of apps or deploy. It shows you that you have one nginx and it is ready. One of one, it's up to date. One is up to date. One is available 14 seconds ago. So these replicas means I want to create one pod, all right, in my nginx deployment. So my nginx deployment should have one pod, all right. That's what this replica means. So when you look at it here, it tells you that I have one out of one. Of course, now this is I think this is containers. I'm not too sure, but let's see. So I'm going to, before we proceed, I'll show you how I'll scale up these replicas and we'll try to look at the difference. But first of all, let's look at the pods. So if I come here and I do kgpo, it tells me that, oh, I have an nginx pod running. But now look at, we have, some additional things appended to the name. This is how Kubernetes works. Actually, this is automatically generated from the deployment that we created. But what you should know is that, the pod was created, right? After you created deployment, the pod was created. Now, another thing I could show you is we're going to do k-get replica sets. So it creates a replica set. A deployment, when you create a deployment, it creates a replica set. Now, this replica set is responsible for handling the replicas that we saw earlier. All right. So right now it tells you that you have one desired replica. All right, which is what I specified. This is what I desired. I wanted one. All right, what I specify is what I desire. Then Kubernetes tries to get it to that state, and it tells you that I have one current replica. That's why it's up to date. All right. Now, if I come here and I try to scale it up, now I can scale up this deployment to have two replicas. Now, if I want to have two replicas, I can delete this deployment and create another one with two replicas, or I can simply scale. So I can do scale deployment. Name of my deployment is nginx. Don't forget, this is it, nginx. Then I want to have two replicas, or let's say three replicas. So I'm just going to put a watch on this. All right, this is a watch flag. I'm doing the same command, get replica set, but I'm doing a watch here. Now I'm going to do replicas equals 3. So when I do this, look at it changes from 1 desired to 3. Then when it did that at first, there was only 1 still remaining. All right. and it had to move from one. Look at that. Look at the the state change. So one was ready, then it moved to two, then it moved to three. All right. Now this is the desired state, 3, and the current is now 3. Earlier on it was 1. All right. So we have that. Now if I check the ports as well, let's go back from the replica.
Sorry, Ile.
Sure.
Okay, so I wanted to confirm just 2 things real quick.
Okay.
From this analysis now, the desired state and the current state, what is the difference between the two? I used to see it, but I just know that my desired state, I just want it to be 2 or to be any number. I don't pay so much attention to, is it more like the desired state, the minimum and the maximum? Those are the things I wanted to clarify. And that is one. Number 2 is, if you have to deploy this application using more like a file, not using the command prompt, and you have to scale this from this replica to another replica, I want to believe this doesn't have reflection on the document if you have to go through this route. In this situation, what we suggest or what we advise, generally speaking, because most of the times I've never even done any deployment having to use the kubectl command and directly having to put the image or the replica set. So I just want to understand, okay, maybe the best approach, or what and what and when is this this scenario can be useful.
Okay, good questions. Good questions. The first question you asked, if what's different between desired state and current state. All right. Now it doesn't refer to minimum and maximum. It could at some point if that's what you decide, right? But desired state is what you want. The current state is what currently is, what is happening. All right. For instance, my desire when I create a pod is that I want the pod to be running. But the current state may be that the pod is failing, right? Do you understand? Now, when it comes to deployment, my desire might be I want to have 2 pods running, but the current state may be one of them has crashed. All right, one of them crashed. Now, because we're using a deployment object, and I said the deployment helps you with self-healing. It tries to take the current state to the desired state. Do you get? So there is a desired state, what you declare. This is what I want to have. This is what my system should look like. This is what the world should look like. But the world doesn't look like what I declared. So now Kubernetes tries to bring what the current state of the world is to my desired state. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes sense, but is it possible that if we have a desired state of 4 and the current state is showing 2, and we are wondering what could actually happen, because I'm expecting the same image to create the same application? I don't know whether I understand what I mean. So I need something to be 4, but currently it's 2. But everything that is being configured for the 2 current states should also work for the remaining 2 that I'm expecting it to work. So have you encountered such a situation before? Is it possible?
So I think I understand what you're referring to. Right. That's a different, I think that's a different thing. Right. That you probably can deploy a minimum, you can specify a minimum. So when you're having deployments and you're having rollouts, all right, it's called rollouts. You can specify the minimum amount of replicas to have and the maximum. All right, that's where you now have something like, for instance, now, if I specify the minimum amount of pods that I should have as, let's say as 2, all right, my desired state might be 4, but during a rollout, what is happening is that's during it. Now, this might be a bit complex for some people, but let's see. Let me see if I can get this from here. So I'm going to try to edit this deployment and show us. Let me see if it will show us here. Let's see if it shows. Second. Yeah, so look at this strategy, this deployment strategy thing. So we have, for instance, it tells us that the type of this strategy is rolling updates. All right. And if we go to, let me come to the documentation. Now that's a good question. Let's see. I'm going to share another screen. So this is hands-on, right? So let's try and figure it out ourselves. Share. Yeah. So I'm coming to the documentation, Kubernetes documentation. Then we can go to deployment. Let's go to deployments. Then we can check. Let's see. Always check the docs. That's what I always tell people. Always check the docs. So let's see. Let's scroll down and see. One second. Updating the deployment. Is it no, not this is not example. Let's see. Let's see what we have here. Okay, I'm not sure, but let's still check. Let's see. Strategy. Okay. So we have deployment strategy. It specifies the strategy to replace old pods by new ones. All right. It says it can be recreated, it can be rolling updates. What we saw in our cluster was rolling updates, which is the default value. So let's come to rolling updates. This one. It says deployment updates pods in a rolling update fashion. When you set this, you can specify maximum unavailable max search to control the rolling updates. Let's see what maximum unavailable is. It says if an optional field this is an optional field that specifies the maximum number of pods that can be unavailable. This value can be an absolute number, for instance, 5, or a percentage of desired pods, for instance, 10% can be unavailable. The absolute number is calculated from the percentage by rounding down, blah, blah, blah. So let's look at this example. It says, for example, when this value is set to 30%, the old replica set can be scaled down to 70% of desired pods immediately when the rolling update starts. That means, for instance, if you have 10 pods, right? Let's say we created a deployment that has 10, we say 10 replicas, but now we want to do a rolling update deployment. Maybe we want to change from one version of the application that we have deployed to another version. And we want to have, we specify the maximum unavailable to be 30%. Now, 30% of 10 is 3. That means we're saying we want 3. The maximum that can be unavailable is 3 pods. Now, our desired replica, our replica is 10, all right? But we're saying during a rolling update, we want to have at most 3 that will be unavailable. Now, in that scenario, when you are updating the application, when you're doing a rolling update, the number of pods that you may find there is 3. I mean, it's 7. Now, 3 will be unavailable. Whilst now, Kubernetes will always try to bring it back to your desired state, which is 10. So even though you have 10 that are running, 7 that are running, 3 unavailable, or 3 that are not ready, Kubernetes now tries to create the new version. It starts by creating them one by one. It could be, maybe that's what your deployment looks like. It starts to create them maybe one by one till it reaches that 10 desired states. I don't know if I've explained your question.
This is clear, actually.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So now the second question, did I miss the second question? I think you said Can you remind me? Sorry, second question. Or can you remember? Do you remember?
I can't remember as well.
Let me see if I share my screen. Okay, let's just move on from here. I can't remember as well. I was supposed to answer it. But okay, nevertheless, let's continue. Maybe I'll answer you offline. So
Oh, I remember. Just
okay.
a quick one. I'm asking more of like what is the best practice in terms of when you use a file to deploy your application and you're having to make changes to your deployment process through the command prompts, not like changing the process on the file and I'm applying it. So I'm just
All right, good. Yeah, I remember now. So before all that thoughts, but let's just quickly finalize on the first question. So this is what I was trying to explain from that documentation. We have 3 replicas. Now, under the strategy, that's spec or strategy, we have the type as rolling updates and we have max unavailable as 25%. So if I had 4 pods as my replicas, let's assume 4, 25% will mean one of them can be unavailable during a rolling update strategy. So while it's supposed to be 4, one might be unavailable and I'll just have 3, but my desired state is supposed to be 4. It will show you 4, but what you have as current will be 3. All right, and if you try to bring the current state to the desired state, I just wanted to cement that thought. But yeah, that's what we have there. I'll close this. Now, as to the question about whether, so what I'm doing here is, yeah, you're asking about best practice. Now, best practice or good practice will be to have your deployment manifests, especially in the age of GitOps where we are currently in now. When you want to have your manifest. When I mean my manifest is your YAML files to create a deployment. You typically want to have that so that you can review what you have done. You want to have, if you're following GitOps, you want to check in code to say that this is what we have. You can compare your code against your infrastructure. All of this that we're doing from the command line, you typically encode them in your YAML manifest. So the replicas, you have a deployment file that specifies all of those things. But there are situations where you need to, let's assume your application quickly needs, maybe something is happening and you need to scale down. You may not want to go update. Of course, good practice is to have all of those things in my own opinion, is to have them in your YAML file and do all of that. But you may want to just temporarily scale down something. You don't need to begin to update your YAML file. You just scale down, simple, with this command. Scale down temporarily, and maybe you just need to scale down because something is happening, or you want to scale up. Maybe you want to scale up from 3 to 10 quickly, just for 1 hour, all right, or just for 10 minutes. You can just quickly scale straight up. So both of them have their places, right? It's good to know both of them. If you're doing the exam, you need to know both of them actually, so that you as an administrator, you should actually know both of them, right? I hope that answered your question as well.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, fantastic. So I've explained the replica set to us, so if you check the ports now, we have 3 replicas all running. That's because we scaled up to 3. If I scale down, I can scale down as well. How do you scale down? You just change it from, for instance, 3 to 1. And when I do that and I do get ports, you see that it has scaled down to 1. All right. And if you do a describe, okay, describe pod nginx, deployment. Let's describe the deployment. Deploy. So you see that